Hey everybody, this is Stan Wanglund, and welcome to Just Thinking Episode 2. I think I have a good one tonight, kind of a short one, but still a goodie for me, one I comment on all the time. And I'm going to call this episode Monsters from the Id. I'm sorry for laughing, but anybody who knows me says, oh shit, Stan's going to start with Monsters from the Id again. And I'm a science fiction fan, and one of the most famous lines from a science fiction movie, and I'm going to play it for you here tonight. It's only 6 seconds long. Is from Warren Stevens, the great actor, to Leslie Nielsen as the captain. I think his name is Captain Adams in the picture, where he puts on this enhancement device from these long dead creatures of the Forbidden Planet, the Krells, and he finds out that the reason that the Krells were destroyed, they were destroyed from monsters from the id. And I was thinking as I was watching the news and seeing everybody criticizing everybody. It's Martin Luther King Day here. I'm actually doing this show, and this person's fighting with that person. There's this divisiveness with this particular group. People are screaming and yelling, and they don't understand why all these different things are happening to folks. And then you can get on social media or get on Twitter, Twitch, whatever it is, and you're just seeing nonstop just monsters from the id. And it's a fascinating thing. And it was one of the great things in the picture, in the movie, which I believe was made in 1951 or shortly thereabouts, maybe 53, but very early 50s. And it's as relevant today, that movie, in terms of the message for science fiction, as it will ever be. It will continue to be, relative to the way that people behave. And it's based on classic Freudian terms: the id, ego, and superego. And the id is this primitive part that we have, and then we have the superego, which are things like morals and values and other things like that, things our parents tell us, priests, ministers, the cops on the street. And then we have our ego that kind of balances these things, and we get reality testing. Well, what's the whole point of what I'm trying to say? I think the intense level of dysfunctionality in the world out there today is not unlike the demise of the Krells, these mysterious creatures on the Forbidden Planet, when they developed this psychic energy machine that would allow them to project any thought that they had immediately. And it wound up destroying them in one evening after millions of years of evolution. And as the character says, it's from monsters from the id. And I guess tonight's show is when I look around and I see the news, or see the way people are acting in general, not everybody, but so many people, the lack of reason, the lack of ability to just chill out with one another, it really is, to me, monsters from the id. And it's funny, here's the line as it was said in the movie. I'm going to play it here. I hope you can hear it.
Monsters, John. Monsters from the id.
I have to play that again in case you didn't hear it.
Monsters, John. Monsters from the id.
Isn't that amazing? The character in the movie is so desperate. He actually sacrifices his life, and he makes this discovery. And the monsters from the id in the movie is really the primary antagonist in this did I say 51? I think it's a 1956 American science fiction film. And it's a creature, again, made of solidified psychic energy derived from the subconscious thoughts of Dr. Morbius. Boom. He was the scientist who was left on the planet, on Forbidden Planet, and gained these skills. But it was the same thing that happened to the Krells. And the same thing that's happening to us right now, in my opinion. And, probably has happened in our, it probably has happened in our world so many times over and over again. I like to use movies many times as metaphors or just good examples of behaviors that we see today. Another one is the classic play Inherit the Wind. And, Inherit the Wind, that's basically based on the Scopes monkey trials, which were teaching evolution in Tennessee, I believe it was, in the 20s. And Clarence Darrow and William Jennings Bryan faced off against one another. And it was one of those heated issues, about evolution versus the Bible as it is today. And Stanley Kramer did this great film in the 60s about that. And it's a quote that's taken from the Bible, from Proverbs. And it says that he that troubles his own house, I have to read this, shall inherit the wind, and the fool shall be the servant to the wise of heart. And boy, has that happened in our history before? It could be the Civil War. It could be the Vietnam War. It could be, today is Martin Luther King Day, when I'm actually recording this show, with all the racial injustice in our nation, or it could be the political environment we've had. It could be McCarthyism and blacklisting. I mean, we could go on and on with different periods. And what does inherit the wind mean, and how does it relate to Monsters for the Id? Well, it's essentially the same thing. Monsters from the Id was instantaneous. This bad stuff came out and destroyed people immediately. Inheriting the wind essentially means that anyone or any group of people that causes trouble or unrest in their own home, their own town, even their country, you may not invite destruction, but you absolutely invite trouble and chaos into your life and into the life of that community. And tell me that isn't one of the things that happens today. And it's happened before, but it's really, really prevalent today. It's just at an incredible level. And, one of the things that I wanted to do with Just Thinking 2022 is not just point out something that's, terrible and then say, wow, isn't that awful? And we can all sit there and agree upon it. It's there as a point of understanding for all of us, so we can say, well, how the heck do we move forward from this? What do you think is, some of the causes for that? Why are we inheriting the wind? Why are these monsters from the id loose and among us? And I'll tell you what I think. Amongst other things, there's many reasons for it. I mean, we can say, there's racial injustice, there's economic injustice, there's all kinds of, political intrigue that goes on, and people don't do their jobs, and money's involved in politics, and the rich get richer, and all those kind of things. And there's probably an element of truth to all of those things. But when you look at Forbidden Planet, and you look around you, you look at Inherit the Wind, or you look at the Civil War, you look at people doing the wrong thing, groups are composed of smaller parts. So, you couldn't have, in Nazi Germany, headed by Hitler, unless you had a whole bunch of people supporting him. I was told it to people all the time, I'm German and Swedish, Scandinavian, and about another quarter of me is German, and that's quite a combo there of folks, and the Germans were really into that stuff. Sorry if you're German, so am I out there. The show isn't to cause problems with you, but there's a whole bunch of reasons why people were very anti-Semitic, and were very very prone to militarism and following orders, and having all kinds of different kinds of morals, values, and ethics that would lead them to that very bad path, or some people had none. And that's kind of the point that I want to go with tonight quickly on the show, for us to think in a positive way. What are some of the reasons why we're inheriting the wind, which I think we are right now? Our divisiveness, you can't get a straight answer on anything. And people, whether it's a past president, a present president, some people in government want to do their job. They just can't do it because of the divisiveness, the manipulation, the lack of some fundamental human behaviors which are kind of destroying us as people. And I think it'll get better once we clearly understand, what they are. And that, leads me to just a couple of things. And I think a vast degree of this has to do with the fact that we really have had a complete breakdown of ethics, morals, and values. And it starts with people not even understanding what those things are. They think those terms are interchangeable, and in a way they kind of are, but they really aren't. When you live in it, when you're a little boy or you're a little girl, or you're a person that's entering, the world, and you're being taught to be part of a society, you have to be taught the rules of that society, those expectations on a whole variety of levels. As a matter of fact, I would teach this in childhood and adolescence, and it's called Enculturation or acculturation. And it means that your culture, the foundation of how we live gets to carry on. Of course, it changes periodically and adjusts to different things, but there's a succession of ideas. There's a succession of traditions and things like that, and some of them get left by the wayside. New ones are added to them, but there's some sensible way that that's done. When you ignore ethics, values, and morals, it's like ignoring education and science, or ignoring proper behavior towards other people. You get this inheriting the wind, and you get this monsters from the id, because you get basically people are acting purely on their most fundamental needs without filtering it or balancing it with anything else. So, what are some of those things? Values, why are they important, and are they being taught to people? They're basically the foundation of an individual's ability to judge between right and wrong. Values have this deep-rooted system of beliefs that we have that guides our decisions. And they form these personal, individual foundations in our character that influences our behavior. It even influences the way that we see things. And there are examples of values everywhere in your daily life. For example, if your value system is based upon honesty, you would probably choose to study for a test rather than cheating for a passing grade. However, if you value achievement and success over honesty, then maybe then you decide to cheat on the exam instead. And this relates to which value is worth more to that individual. Gee, does that sound like today with things like voter suppression, or people saying I didn't lose this election or whatever? And I'm not picking on Trump or Republicans. This could be done in other ways with liberals, Democrats, anybody in the political arena. That people, if they say, I'm being more, the ends justify the means, or rather the means justify the ends. So, they want to succeed, they want to achieve their goals, they'll do anything to do it. Other people say, no, it has to be done honestly. Now, think about that. Think about how many people really examine their values when they're voting for somebody, or when they're, doing things in their life, working on a job, getting a promotion, just a whole bunch of things. A lot of us are really, many times, not paying attention to values, not paying attention to values in our kids, with our parents, with our culture, with important decisions or big key issues. I mean, look at how people fight over abortion, for example. I know you shouldn't even bring that up here. I'm not going to get into whether that's right or wrong, or a person's own body, or this. I'm just saying, and I get into more arguments with people when we get into being a critical thinker. I'm saying you really can have sensible differences of opinions on both sides of that question, because they deal with a person's sense of morality, their sense of values, and their sense of ethics many times. And they can be different. They can be seen different. They can be taught differently. It's not just about a right answer. It's about these things and these things affecting people. And that's different than people who have no values or morals or ethics concerning that. They don't care one way or the other. They just do what they want to do for none of those reasons. You know? So at least give people respect who may disagree with you on the basis of some solid values, morals, or ethics. Okay? That's all I'm saying, so that we don't have a house divided. Maybe, we have to compromise on some things, or we come up as a society with answers that a number of people are not going to support. But, they've been thought through carefully as well. Now morals, everybody thinks that values and morals are the same thing. They're also known as moral values. And those are the kinds of, they're a system of beliefs that emerge out of core values. So, morals are very specific. And, they're very context driven. And morals basically govern your behavior and my behavior with the desire to do something good, to be good. And they can be shared by a large population, by our society that we live in. But a person's moral code may differ from others depending upon their personal values. Sounds a little bit, sounds a little bit confusing at times, but there's a difference between values and morals. Our values kind of make our personality type, and this code of morals is a big thing, and they kind of become a moral code. Like if you go to West Point or something like that, or you're a doctor, or you're a soldier, or you know that you're not supposed to cheat. An example of a moral is, if a person values honesty, they have a moral value that cheating is bad. Now, again, someone who values success more than honesty may believe that cheating is fine. So those are examples of morals. Now, moral dilemmas happen in our society when morals conflict with one another. And there's all kinds of things, which I'm not going to get into this, but think about that. Think about how many people really sit and are troubled by moral dilemmas. We see that in movies and television shows all the time. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite shows as a kid growing up, you can see it on TV land still, is Leave It to Beaver. And part of the show, every show was usually about some little moral development about, Beaver learns the lesson of this, or, Beaver learns this, or the Andy Griffith Show was an example of that. And then you could see over time, the show still had that, but they became very fuzzy. They became very idiosyncratic to people. They became very disjointed with any kind of large moral reasoning. And everything was, or many of these things that we would see in society and see now are basically telling you, hey man, you got to do your own thing. It's what you think. It's not what other people think. It's not what society thinks. It's not, that this issue, it doesn't matter about this. And I would disagree with that. I think it's very hard to function as a culture, as a society that way. Doesn't mean you can't have your own personal values. But it means there also have to be some other parts of your moral and ethical and value relationship. I know that, when I worked as a trainer and as a senior administrator in a state agency, we had tons of team building and tons of training on values clarification. How we work with staff, how we work with clients, how we work with patients. What are our goals? What's our mission statement? All this kind of stuff. Man, you don't see any of that stuff anymore. You don't see any of it. And if you see any of that kind of stuff, it's a bunch of bunk. Half of the time. And probably a lot of it was a bunch of bunk back then, but there was also a lot of stuff that was really serious about that, where you really took that stuff seriously. And I think these are the things right now that are killing us and become where we inherit the wind, and these become the monsters from the id. We don't have any more of that superego. Remember I said we have that id, that stuff that's all selfish stuff? You have reality testing, which is your ego, how you see things realistically. And up on the other end, that's kind of balancing that primitive side of us, is that superego. It's all this morals, values, and ethics and things like that. That kind of balances. And right in the middle, as we get like this is where we're seeing things clearly. We're not getting that now. We're getting, it's real heavy on this end. Whatever the hell you want to do, you do. Whatever you want to say, you say. And damn the torpedoes, man. The ends justify the means to things. Cheating, stealing, whatever. It's okay. That kind of stuff. Last thing related to this is that morals and ethics, they're very similar. Some people who study ethics even think that they're interchangeable. And good things with ethics are like doctors having ethics. They're held to a strict code of ethics when they take the Hippocratic Oath. They're supposed to be bound to the rule of do no harm. Like organizations like PETA, the Ethical Treatment for Animals, they pursue legal action against those who don't treat animals in ethical ways, like on movies and in medical research and things like that, because these are sentient beings that have feelings and thoughts and love for their own species and other species. Employees in organizations often will sign a code of ethics. Think of our Congress, though. They supposedly have ethics, but they break them all the time. Nothing happens. People lie, cheats. You're not. If you're watching the news, man, you think people are telling the truth? Well, politics has always been a dirty game. Other games have always been dirty, like lawyers and things like that. It can get very dishonest deal making and people having to take deals because they may get prosecuted and go away 50 years, so they plead guilty to things that aren't even guilty. I mean, it's a sham with those kinds of things. So there is supposed to be ethics in those areas also. So how does this all tie together? Episode 1 was about being very authentic and knocking off the nonsense with people telling you what's authentic. This is a little bit different. This swings the other way. This is saying, or what I'm suggesting and what I've seen in my 70 plus years now, is that sometimes you have too much morality pushed down your throat. You don't have any individuality. You can't have any personal values, or you're being forced to think a certain way, forced to have certain ethics, forced to have a moral code. I'm not saying that. I'm saying society should, by reason and by example and by basically having good product of morals that are good for people usually can see that for themselves if they're presented, if people have a chance to think about their moral development, their values, their ethics. But we keep stopping people from doing that. We keep telling them that they've been triggered, that this is going to be upsetting, that you have to separate this from that this is no good. Philosophy maybe no. It's all baloney. Religion is no good. This is no good. Well, no. These things, you don't have to be an active religious person to read the various religious books and Bibles and Qurans and other things out there, which have all kinds of examples of fine ethical moral behaviors that you can incorporate in your life. And you don't have to be a Christian or a Muslim or anything else, or a Buddhist or anything else. It's just good common sense stuff, like that Proverbs thing about inheriting the wind. Or the science fiction thing about monsters from the ed. You could sit down. I've done training sessions. As a matter of fact, I used to went to some stuff with a really important guy from Harvard called John Worley, and he loves to use films like Sophie's Choice and other things like that, where senior management, people in big positions would be sitting down and they'd be watching a movie where people had to make these ethical and moral choices based on their personal values, and should they change and what should they do. And this related to better treatment for people in hospitals and people receiving services and things like that. Think if our government officials did that instead of being a bunch of sleazebags. that look to bypass the laws, look to suppress things, look to manipulate things, look to tie things up, and basically don't do anything except pad the bureaucracy in which they stand to benefit from. But who puts them there? Who allows that morally, ethically, and by our own values to happen? We do. Because a huge amount of people, for example, don't even go out and vote. And that's just, an example of something. That's an easy one to use. Or when you see certain things in sporting events and you see, really bad sportsmanship, really bad behavior. But hey, man, you're cheering and screaming and eating your chicken wings and carrying on and like a damn fool because that's just what you feel like doing, having a good time. It doesn't matter what these characters do. It's just what I'm thinking about. It's kind of like garbage in, garbage out. So what am I suggesting? Well, like a lot of people are looking at their weight, they're being careful for COVID or throwing a ban into the wind or whatever it is, or it's the time of the year where everybody's waiting for spring, summer, or the better times. And as we're thinking about some things, let's do a little mental, moral, values, and ethics workout each day. Just a few minutes to think about some of these things. And think about maybe what are our morals? And why do we have them? And why the ones that we have, what makes them good for us and for other people? That's what I'm thinking. And I'm thinking that our reality testing would improve. It's no big piece of rocket science that I'm throwing out there to people, but it's just something that I think that the majority of people now are just too damn lazy to do. And, like I said, garbage in, garbage out. You're getting exactly, and I'm getting exactly what we put into it. And that's diddly poop. So, can it be changed? Absolutely. Very easily. And it's been done before. Many, many times. And it will be done again. I'm sure that, in human history, we go through periods like this. But I'd like to see us get through it a lot faster. And, in every crisis, there's an opportunity. That's the good news. That's the yin and yang. That's always the case. When things are hitting the fan and it's all going south, hey, there's nowhere else but up. So, you can feel optimistic, and so can I, because it really can't get, I guess it can get worse, but it's pretty darn bad. And it would be very easy and nice to see it get better. So it's something to think about. Hope you enjoyed the show tonight. And if you like the show and you want more of them, hit that darn subscribe button. Throw a comment in there, or if you want to catch a hold of me, I'm not living a secret life or anything else like that. You can get me at Stan Wanglund. That's SWANGLUND at gmail.com. Send me a message, and I'll be glad to say hi. If you host a show or something like that, and you want me on as a guest, that's great. Right now, this is episode 2. Is starting right from the ground floor, baby. I mean, this is as low as you go right here. So it's it's all upwards. So it's a lot of fun. It'll take a lot of time to get a large audience, if that happens. There's millions of people out there doing podcasts and YouTube. So if you like this kind of stuff, support it by coming back and looking a little bit more. And if you have ideas for topics or things that you're thinking about, let me know. Okay? Well, with that, I'm going to say goodnight, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye now.